Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Welcome back. Thursday afternoon, 5:30, and today's topic is hydrotherapy for dogs and cats. Yes, and cats. I think that very often the idea is that we can simply put an animal in water, and because they will instinctively swim, that's the therapy. And while it might be successful, the truth is that there is a lot of science that underlies the use of water as a therapeutic agent. And in fact, hydrotherapy or water therapy dates back to ancient Roman and Greek times. We all know that many humans trek thousands of miles to go to the Dead Sea. It's also a form of hydrotherapy. And so there is a history in the healing arts of water playing a big role. My internet connection seems to be a little bit unstable, so I'm just going to see if I can get it some other way. Right, trying a different connection, so sorry about that, that little bit of a hiccup there. So what I want to look at is why is hydrotherapy, what is it, and why is it so effective? So let's just look at the reason that therapy in water is so effective. Hello to those of you that have signed on, welcome, is because we use the properties of water as part of the treatment, and that really therein lies the success. So water, by its very nature, lends itself to being a therapeutic aid. So when we look, for example, at one of the properties of water is buoyancy. So when we sit in water, there is an upward thrust of the water that pushes against our bodies and lifts us, and lifts a dog and lifts a cat. And so as a result of that buoyancy, especially in weaker animals, that animal may be able to do certain movements and certain exercises within the water because it is more buoyant. So some of the dogs that we see actually are not able to stand unassisted on land. And if we stand them in the underwater treadmill, or we stand them on a step in a swimming pool, the water buoys them and holds them in that position. So that's the first aspect, and property of water that actually supports us and makes it a good therapeutic aid. The other thing about it is that when an animal is buoyant, we are changing the dynamic of the muscles. We're changing the dynamics of movement. And so a previously painful area, because the dog is not having to actually bear weight or hold itself in a particular way, a lot of that pain may actually be reduced or disappear altogether. So we provide pain relief by placing the animal in water. The second aspect of water, which is tied into the buoyancy, is that of pressure. So we use the term hydrostatic pressure. The water actually pushes against the body, and the deeper the water, the greater the pressure, because it is related to volume. And so, for example, we all know, or maybe we don't, but if a horse, for example, has a swollen fetlock, very often the horse, that limb can be placed in cold water, and it's partly the pressure and partly the cold that actually starts to reduce the pressure, so the swelling. So we've had some dogs with lymph drainage problems where those legs are like legs, a person with elephantiasis almost. They are so big and so swollen. I can only imagine the discomfort. And if we stand those dogs in the pool for 10 minutes, the pressure actually pushes that lymph back into the lymphatic system and drains it away. So the hydrostatic pressure is another really important property that we make use of when we are using water as a therapeutic aid. The next aspect, which I touched on, are the thermal effects of water. So when we work with horses, very often the temperature of the water is cold. But when we work with dogs and with cats, the temperature is a whole lot warmer. And that warmth itself increases the blood flow, which enhances circulation, takes oxygen in to the areas where the body needs it. So when we change the temperatures of water, and so if it's cold water, we can use it, or even close to freezing, we can use it to reduce swelling. With warm water, we're using it to enhance blood flow and functions of the body and the state of repair. The fourth function of water, which is also really important, is that of cohesion. So molecules of water tend to want to stick together. They draw each other together. And that cohesion is most evident on the surface. And when we are using water as a therapeutic aid, we can really use this either to support an area. So in other words, if we have had surgery on the knee and it's soon after the surgery, we want to make sure that that knee is completely covered with water, so that when the dog is walking, the knee doesn't have to break the surface of the water, because the moment it has to break the surface of the water, then the exercise is more difficult. On the flip side, if we are more progressed in the therapy and we want more strength, we may actually drop the level of water to the joint that we wish to treat, and we make the exercise more difficult because there is this surface tension and attraction between the molecules, and it takes more effort to break the surface. The next property that we use is that of turbulence and resistance, and I think we can all appreciate this. How many of you have been in the pool and try to walk, and how many of you try to run? The water creates a great deal of resistance to movement, and that in itself means that we are able to use more our muscles more readily, or we engage them more to move against the resistance of the water. And the more quickly we move, the more turbulence we create, the more we have cohesion, the more difficult it becomes to move in the water. So if you couple that increased resistance with the support of the water, we can actually ask our patients to do a fair amount more in the water than we may expect them to be able to do on land. And that truly is a gift for us as vets and as therapists. And so it becomes important for us to understand these properties and understand the effects that they have on the body, so that we can make appropriate choices about the hydrotherapy that the type of therapy that we choose to administer to your cat or dog or horse even. So that brings me to what do we view as hydrotherapy? You know, any body of water can be used as a therapeutic tool. And so it doesn't have to be a heated pool. It doesn't have to be a whirlpool. It doesn't have to be a spa. Spas can be very effective as well in treating. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated piece of equipment like an underwater treadmill. If you have access to a sea, river, dam, pool of water that your dog is able to easily enter, then you can perform hydrotherapy wherever you may be. I think it is important that it is a very, especially swimming, is a highly cardiovascularly challenged exercise. And if we talk about the pressure of the water on the body, we also need to be careful with certain breeds of dog. And so if they are compromised in terms of respiration, or if they have a heart problem, then we want to be certain that the choice of therapy is going to be determined by the level of compromise that we have in that animal. So in those dogs, for example, we wouldn't immediately ask them to swim. And so the underwater treadmill or walking in a dam of water becomes a really good halfway mark because we're able to manage speed and exertion, and we're not going to place that dog into physiological stress. And that is vitally important. It's part of our job as therapists to ensure the safety of our patients. And so sometimes I meet with clients that have been told by professionals, by veterinary professionals, to simply swim their dog at home. Now, I don't have a problem with swimming your dog at home. What I do feel is important is that if you have a little bit of guidance from a person that has actually been trained in the art of hydrotherapy, you are not going to endanger your dog, firstly. And secondly, your swims at home are going to be way more effective as a therapy than if you simply throw your dog in the pool. So I urge you to please contact someone who is qualified. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Registered physiotherapists and registered canine hydrotherapists are available on a website which is www.sapra.co.za. SAAPRA. We're in a process of registering a new profession with Veterinary Council. The people that are on that website are authorized, and some of them are registered to actually work with your dogs and cats. And please look there to make sure that you find someone who is suitably trained and qualified to work with your dog and cat. So let's just look at one or two other things with regards to hydrotherapy. So we can use any body of water. We can use a pool. We can use fancy underwater treadmills, which is a piece of equipment I absolutely love. It's completely transformed my practice. And we can even use spa baths. We can use ice. I mean, we think ice is thermal therapy, and it is, but in fact, ice is frozen water. And we could twist the definition a little and use and say we're working with hydrotherapy in order to reduce the swelling. So what types of problems can we treat using hydrotherapy? One of the biggest things that we have success with is obviously osteoarthritis. And the plus side with us here, Gauteng is quite cold in the winter. Our pool is indoors. Our pool is heated. It sits at between 28 and 32 degrees, depending on the ambient temperature. And it's a fantastic way to relieve the pressures on the joints and the concussive forces. And as I said, if your dog is swimming, it allows for very, very free movement in the water, which the dog is not able to have on land often because of joint compromise and because of pain. And in that process, we are stimulating muscles, we're increasing blood flow, we're actually strengthening the body and allowing it to be able to move in an improved manner and in a stronger way when that is transferred from the water to land. How frequently do we swim dogs? I like to treat them at least once a week. Any less frequently and we don't really see a result. However, the more frequently you can swim your dog or exercise your dog in water, the better the result is going to be. If we have a compromised dog, we rather treat them every second or third day to allow the body and the joints to not be overloaded. We can also treat many neurological problems because the other property of the water, think about yourself, we don't even think about it anymore, but the first time we were exposed to water, we were little and we probably had no idea that it felt strange. But the truth is that water creates a different sensation all over your body. And when dogs have got a nerve dysfunction or they've had a spinal injury and they can't actually walk properly, one of the things that we have to do is stimulate sensation and sensory awareness. And by placing them in the water, not only do we allow them to maybe even stand because the water supports them, but that water as a medium stimulates the skin and stimulates the receptors in that superficial area in a different way to air. And therefore, we are stimulating those nerve pathways that have been damaged, are being stimulated simply by the fact that your dog is in a different medium. Okay, so aside from the fact that that your dog is supported and can actually maybe even walk in the water, which it can't do on land, there are other benefits to putting them in water as well. And so just before I end off this session, I did say, hydrotherapy for dogs and cats. And I often meet with resistance when I say, we could put your cat into the pool or we can walk your cat in the treadmill. And people are astounded when they discover that we have successfully treated cats in water. It's not every cat, I'll be honest. Not every cat has the personality to withstand our ministrations in the water. But we really have done a lot of cats in the swimming pool and a lot of cats balancing on boogie boards in the swimming pool. Depends on what their problem is, that we choose an appropriate type of therapy for them. And we've definitely taught a lot of cats to walk in the underwater treadmill. And even on a normal land-based treadmill, I digress a little now, but that's how my talks go. There's been a lot of research on teaching cats with a spinal injury to walk again using a land treadmill. And that has to do with the neurological aspects of repetition. So the treadmill is a really useful piece of equipment, and the land treadmill and the underwater treadmill is hugely effective in treating our dogs and cats. And so if you are wanting to put your dog in the water and you have a pool and we're coming up for summer, we can look at, like I said, we can look at arthritis, we can look at soft tissue injuries, we can look at nerve conditions, and really we'll get an improvement in the cardiovascular function and the overall muscle tone in your animal. We will also increase endurance. So if they swim for a long time, it's really a good fitness exercise. We will definitely increase core strength. We will definitely improve the range of motion of the joints in the animal that's being placed in the water. We can change the way your dog walks. Sometimes a dog has a particular pattern, and we need to change that pattern not only with manual therapies and myofascial release, but also by putting them in the water, because swimming is a different movement to walking. And we can definitely affect proprioception or awareness. So in closing, it's a very, very useful medium and a very useful modality, but I must implore all of you that it is not as simple as throwing your dog in water. If there is a problem and it requires some input, please call one of us and we'd be more than happy to help. I'm just going to scroll through my feed quickly and see if there are any questions. So let's just have a look. Oh, great. No questions. My job is done. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I hope you found at least a little gem somewhere. And I will catch you all again next week, Thursday at 5:30. Thanks for your attention.